dominant victory for Ferrari and Charles Leclerc, his fourth at 24 years of age, and indeed his first Grand Slam. Pole position yesterday, a win and a fastest lap for Charles Leclerc. The 36th FIA Formula One World Championship Australian Grand Prix. It's the first Grand Prix we've had in the daylight hours since the Brazilian Grand Prix of last year, and it was daylight between this man, Charles Leclerc, 20 seconds of daylight between him and second place Sergio Perez. Well, it was a fantastic race for all of those of you who've been able to see it. And joining me straight away from Kuala Lumpur, former F1 driver, great friend of the show, Alex Young.
Hey, Matt, really good to be here. Wow, what a great race that was. I mean, unexpected how easy it was for Leclerc, wasn't it? Yes, we had Verstappen. I know we're going to unpack it and all, but Ferrari look really genuine, don't they?
They do. They look very strong. We've got a special guest tonight, today, this afternoon, wherever you are in the world, whatever time of day it is. Special guest is Darren Heath, a multi-award-winning photographer. You will have seen his work in the pages of the best magazines around the world, perhaps on Instagram, on Art of F1. Welcome, Darren, from Auckland.
Hi guys, hi everyone. Yeah, thanks very much, Matthew. Great to be with you. Really good Grand Prix to watch. Fantastic light. Kind of wish I was there, but can't help looking at it as a photographer all the time. But also what really came across is, and I think in the first three races has really come across, is just how well Ferrari have worked in those year or two of really not being on the pace. And boy, are they on it now.
So those are our first two guests on Go F1, but of course you, the viewers, are the most important guests, and we'd love to hear from you. You can contact us on a number of different social media channels. Just put my teeth back in, but in particular on Twitter at Go F1 Show. Please do tweet us with your questions, with your comments. A rare opportunity to pose questions to Darren and to Alex Young, and later in the show to another guest who's going to join us from Shanghai. Let's have a quick look at the results of this 2022 Australian Grand Prix. Here they are. And it was Charles Leclerc who led the race from pole position, never lost it despite two safety cars. It was a one-stop race. There we go. Sergio Perez was second, and George Russell beat home his teammate Lewis Hamilton. Something of a resurgence for the Mercedes team ahead of the two McLarens.
Yeah, well, that was super interesting to see Mercedes looking stronger there, weren't they? But big surprise, of course, not having Verstappen there. Great to see both McLarens in the top 10. And I guess the surprise of the whole race was the guy that finished 10th, Alex Albon in the Williams, with that great strategy, making those hard tyres last pretty much to the end of the race, pitted on pretty much the last lap of the race, and able to secure Williams their first point of the season.
Yeah, really impressive. Really impressive.
Let's talk first about the winner, Charles Leclerc. Alex, first of all, and then just chat about it. I mean, it's brilliant for the sport, I think. It's great for Ferrari fans. Maybe a bit too much too soon?
Oof, I'm sure Charles doesn't think that. He'll be like, no, I'll take everything I can get. You know, even going for the fastest lap was important to him today. He has to make hay while the sun shines. You know, Ferrari have got that advantage. But there's no guarantee it's going to stay there for the whole season. You know, Mercedes will improve for sure. Red Bull are right there. You know, Red Bull just need to find a little bit more, and they'll be fine. You know, so really have to make hay while the sun shines. You know, it's interesting enough. This part of the track through the high speed, you can see the Ferrari was porpoising the whole race, and it didn't seem to bother them. You know, and I really felt that they had a little bit extra in hand. The fact that they could win this race by 20 seconds, a very, very good example. And even if, to be honest, even if Verstappen hadn't had those issues, I don't think Verstappen would have been able to run Leclerc close today.
Darren?
Yeah, I think I absolutely agree, and I think it's when you see the way Charles, he was much heralded before he came into Formula One. Obviously, we all saw him in the junior Formula, and since his Alfa Romeo time, he's really proved that he's the real deal. And obviously, we were all concerned when he gets into a car worthy of what we hoped his talent would be, whether he'd deliver. And boy, is he! It's great for the sport that as we see kind of Hamilton coming to the end of his pomp, if you like, and the natural progression of Verstappen coming through, that we really needed someone to step up and to move into that elite driver area and challenge Max. And Charles is everything that we hoped he would be. And on a personal side, whenever I've worked with him, and I'm sure with you guys and most of the press, he's incredibly polite, incredibly amiable, speaks a load of languages, is just great across the board. And it doesn't seem like the success is affecting him. In the post-race, in the Parc Ferme interview, it was really refreshing to see a driver, after 3 races, talking about having a chance to win the title. We're used to drivers who need half a point to win the title, not wanting to talk about it. He's a great guy, great for the sport.
It's so true. And somebody who doesn't like to talk about the championship, exactly to your point, post-race, Max Verstappen didn't want to talk about it, but who's, if you like, sight of it is getting further away, is Max Verstappen, retired lap 39 with, they're not sure what it was, some kind of hydraulics or fuel failure. Alex,
I don't think that Marshall was sure what it was either, was he? As he's watching flames lick out of the car, spraying it on the bodywork.
It always makes me laugh how the drivers. I mean, Verstappen I thought was really calm, because when I see the marshal there, he's spraying it onto the bodywork, and I think, wow, every second you lose, how much damage is being done there.
We can see the flames all around the engine, up the exhaust pipe, the vents.
I'm surprised Verstappen didn't grab it and stick it in there, because
we saw Sebastian yesterday, didn't we? Sebastian went and took the extinguisher and made sure. You almost thought he was putting too much powder on. I was thinking the mechanics have got to clean it off, but it's better to come back with a serviceable engine and parts rather than a crisp.
Yeah.
Sergio Perez then did finish second, scored some points for the team, but didn't look like he had the pace to challenge at all.
Yeah, but it was quite surprising, wasn't it? You could see that quite a few of the cars were suffering with graining on the front left. So I think that was hampering the Red Bulls. I mean, Verstappen was certainly complaining about it very early on, and that's why he was the first to pit, first of the one-stoppers to pit. But not the only team to suffer from that. We saw Alonso suffering from that in the Renault, the Alpine later on as well. So quite a few cars there. Even without the graining of the front tires, I don't think Perez would have been able to take the fight to Leclerc.
No, I concur, absolutely. But one thing that slightly disappoints me with Sergio is how, and I guess it's reflective of his position within the team, but I feel like he needs to step up a bit and put his foot on the throat a little bit. And not when the cool down lap, when he's talking to Christian on the radio, his first message was basically sorry for Max. What are you being sorry for Max for? Stop being sorry for Max and worry about the position you finished. And I was disappointed with the way. I know that he doesn't want to hit Max, but he hooked it up beautifully at the start. He was close to Max and he deferred tremendously. And he said that Lewis braked incredibly late. Lewis didn't brake particularly late. You just gave him the corner. And I think he needs to just I don't know, push up a little bit harder.
And it's a good point, isn't it? Because Carlos is fourth in the championship. Carlos, what I'm talking about? Sergio, sorry. Sergio is fourth in the championship, and he's ahead of his teammates. Alex, as a driver, what do you think Sergio should be doing?
It's tough, man, because now he's been pigeonholed into that thing, right? And you always get the feeling now with Sergio, even though he's had those great performances, helped the team very keenly win that championship last year, with what he did with Hamilton. But they have to be looking to, they want another Sainz, don't they? And I think it's very hard once you've been into that number 2 role to try and break out of it. You saw Bottas try to do it last year, 2 years ago, and try and be a bit more forward with what he wanted from the team and from the car and stuff, but didn't really work, So, yeah, that's very difficult. I mean, I can't see it changing for him.
And it must be worrying for them to have, what is it now? Max has won one race, but he hasn't finished in 2 of them. And Sergio has had his own issues as well in Bahrain, of course. So that is very troubling, isn't it, Darren?
It's surprising, isn't it? But I don't know. Maybe it's something we'll touch on later. But in the in the lexicon of all these things, you've got to take into consideration possibly that Red Bull are now responsible for their own engine. I know they have Honda guys, back in Milton Keynes, but is this something that perhaps we should have expected, that they will slightly fall off a cliff? That maybe is a little bit too disingenuous and hard to say, but it's kind of, I hear in the background that Honda are putting more people into the team on the quiet, but it's not a coincidence. Personally, I don't think that they're suffering a little bit with reliability issues, which they didn't last year.
Good point.
It's a very good point there. So those of you watching, let us know what you think about that. At GoF1 Show, if you're on Twitter, we'd like to hear your comments, particularly about this topic of Red Bull. Have they pushed too hard? They've got a super fast car, not as fast as the Ferrari, but not too bad. When I say not as fast as the Ferrari, you have to remember today, actually, Mercedes looked really good, didn't they?
Yeah, fantastic. And I think it's not surprising, is it? The resource and the brain power, if you like, that they can bring to bear. I know we've got cost cutting and all that kind of tedious stuff to consider, but the work that must be going on, and as someone who doesn't really understand aerodynamics on a tremendous level, I understand things like the Cohand effect and negative and positive pressure and these things that they're dealing with. But I'm a bit surprised that it's taking the teams more time than I thought it would to deal with this porpoising issue. It's almost, as I think Alex touched on, it's almost that Ferrari are just accepting that their car will have that. I know we're at race 3, and they're probably for San Marino, we'll start to see upgrades and not B-spec cars later on, but real kind of changes. But it's an issue I thought they would have started to get on top by now.
Well, I think 2 reasons why it's always going to be a bit tougher for the teams. They will get on top of it, but it will take a while. Because all the flexing of the bodywork also ties in the flexing of the tire as well. And trying to calculate that, that's the last little bit that's really hard to calculate when you develop a car, is how the tire flexes and how that influences aerodynamics. And that's what's happening, really. Just flexes, sucks the car down, and then it cuts the air, and then it pushes back up, and then it sucks it down again.
Yeah.
So it's really, I'm not really surprised to see him take so long on it. And also, we mustn't forget that it's the cost cap as well, which does make it tricky, because they want to make sure that when they do bring updates, when they do spend money on stuff, that it's actually stuff they put into production that actually works. Because the worst thing would be to spend money on something that doesn't work, and they just have to chuck it back off the car again. So, I mean, Mercedes, you can't discount Mercedes. They will get there. But like you said, Darren, I don't think they're going to make inroads until we get back to Europe.
I'm with you on that. We've got a question actually from our audience about this question from John the Storyteller, he's saying that obviously they have got a performance boost. The question is, from where did it come? Have we got any clues as to that? Because it was surprising how much pace the Mercedes cars had relative to the others, including, as I mentioned, at least one of the Red Bulls.
For me, yes, they had a small improvement, but like I said, I don't think we're going to see proper improvement until we get back to Europe. But I think it was flattered a bit because the Red Bulls look so poor. They still finished 20 seconds behind the Ferrari, which is, I think, a small improvement, but not much,
Yeah, I think they obviously set up all weekend for race pace, and I think that came to them, and I think that shows a kind of maturity and professionalism, which we're not surprised we see with Mercedes. And if they do find that switch, and they switch this car on, which may be in San Marino, probably won't be Miami, but maybe when we get to the run of European races in the kind of from Monaco, Spain onwards, in the balance of the season, I think that these races where they picked up 3rd and 4ths and even 10ths or when Lewis the last race, they're the ones that will pay dirt later in the year.
You use the word switch, and I think you're right. I think what Mercedes are very good at doing is that business of switching on the tyres, right? We know the tyre temperatures are very sensitive, and particularly on a track where they go to, which has been resurfaced and so on. I think that's maybe where Mercedes, as much as they haven't got the pace yet, they're able to maximise what pace they have. And let's talk about that in the context of the 2 drivers, because we heard Lewis Hamilton on the radio towards the end of the race not sounding quite as happy as he might be. And no surprise, because George Russell is ahead of him on the racetrack, on the podium, second place now in the Drivers' Championship. Alex, any thoughts on that?
Well, he's a proper racer, isn't he? He doesn't like getting beaten, and the first person you don't want to lose to is your teammate. I mean, we knew this would happen, didn't we, coming to the season, that George would give him a proper fight. And George is not going to be Perez. He's not going to defer to Hamilton. He's going to be feisty. In a way, this is happening. It's not as feisty as it would be if they were number 1 and 2 in the championship. Imagine they were 1 and 2 in the championship. How many more headlines they would get about Russell beating Hamilton? That's all we'd be talking about. But because they're down and fighting for the lower positions of the podium, top 5, that sort of thing, we're not really talking about it so much. But Hamilton is aware of it, isn't he? You can hear it in his voice. He's upset about it. He was blaming the team for putting him in that position, when really it was just luck of the draw that the safety car came out when Russell was coming in. So there's already some tension. It's not Rosberg yet, there's tension yet, but it will be.
I thought that was disappointing, and it's something that is kind of disappointing with Lewis. The rust gets thrown out of the pram pretty quickly, and as you say, blaming the team, or you've thrown me a curveball here. The team aren't to know when Vettel's going to hit the wall and spray carbon fibre everywhere. That's not in their gift.
Yeah. Do you find that surprising, given how much success he's had, that he's 37 years of age, that he's so mega in so many ways, that this area is still, I don't know, a bit rough?
I don't find it surprising. I think it goes to show a little bit of the character of the guy and the man in the helmet. And I don't mean that to be disingenuous to Hamilton. I mean that more in that he's a racer who wants to win, and it doesn't matter that he's got 7 world titles and was robbed of an 8th. That he still wants to win, and I think that we'll see as the season progresses, if they can't switch that car on, or if George Russell does and Hamilton can't make it suit his style for whatever reason, I think this will get worse. And I think that the psychological issues and the psychological baggage from the shocking incidents in Abu Dhabi last year will really start to weigh heavy on Hamilton. That title that got away, because make no mistake, he desperately wants 8 titles and to beat Michael Schumacher's record.
And that question that he's asking, which is, when is the car going to be better, is the question we've just had also in from the audience. Michael Lee is asking, when, in particular, Michael's asking, when will we see a 3-way fight with Mercedes? And do you think, this is a great question from Michael, do you think they would have to come up with a B-spec car? And he mentions the cost cap. It's good question there.
Darren, you want to take that?
Well, it is a good question, Michael. And what I would say is, hopefully, it'll be FP1 at San Marino Grand Prix. That's what we all hope, because we want to go from, when was the last time we had 4 or 5, 3 or 4 drivers, fighting for a title? What is it, 2012, 2013, that kind of era? And you look back and you see those guys who are all fighting going into the Korean Grand Prix. I think one year with Vettel not so much in the title fight and then coming through and win it eventually, as we know. And we want to see those kind of things transpiring. And we really want, even though they've had all that dominance for so many years, we want them to see on the coattails of Ferrari and the Red Bull. It'd be brilliant.
Let's talk a little bit about Ferrari. We talked about them at the top of the show with the win for Charles. I think we might have a question actually from the audience. I'm just checking here what I've got in. We've got a lot of people asking questions of different shades. I guess.
Couple there for Darren.
Yeah, are they going to run away with the title? This is the question about Ferrari, or not. Actually, I'm going to go first and say, yeah, I think they've got it. I think they've come into this season incredibly well prepared, because, and here is the question from John, the storyteller. I think it's they had the season last year to prepare, didn't they? Whilst Mercedes and Red Bull were knocking hell out of each other, and I think they are going to run away with it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I hope they don't. But I think that. I think that as I said in kind of my opening monologue, if you like, that I think that they really have used that time well, and they look like, it struck me at Leclerc's pit stop today that they look like an incredibly well drilled unit. That, and forgive me, I love going to Italy, but the Italians are not particularly renowned for that kind of military-like kind of precision, unless we think back to the Schumacher days, the Michael Schumacher pomp, and you had Stepney and you had Brawn and you had the kind of English element there, all marshalled by the Frenchman Jean Todt, obviously, and they were a frightening team of automatons. And suddenly they've come this year and look like, wow, shades of 2004 almost, and it's good to see, but we don't want them to run away with it.
Yeah, no. And we have to also remember that, of course, we want to see Red Bull and Mercedes up there. And to be honest, they will improve. And I actually do think it'll be a three-way fight. The one thing we have seen from Ferrari over the last few years, even when they were fighting for the championship with Vettel, so 2018, 2019, was that they would go off the boil about 3/5 of the way the championship through. They'd make a lot of operational mistakes. And in Vettel's case, Vettel made a lot of mistakes. I don't think Leclerc will make mistakes. I think Leclerc is one of their aces they have in their pocket, but operationally, it'd be interesting to see if they can carry that intensity all the way through the season.
Yeah, we'll see with the cost cap, because they're not the most affected team in cost cap, are they? So they will have a bit of a run on the other two. Well, on the Red Bull and definitely on Mercedes.
Yeah, they probably benefited with some 2021 budget spent for this year in a sense of development. Let's have a look at my favourite chart is the driver performance or race performance chart, I think we call it, which compares starting position with ending position. So there's one red box there, which is Lando Norris dropping a place, of course, from his 4th place starting position, basically being mobbed by the two Mercedes drivers. And let's start, I think, with the guy who's up 10. Not only did he start from the back of the grid, let's not forget he actually had a 3-place grid penalty from the crash that he had at the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix with Lance Stroll, and then he got actually disqualified from qualifying, so it didn't matter anyway because he didn't have a fuel sample at the end of qualifying. So we questioned maybe whether Williams had their strategy right in qualifying in terms of amount of fuel. They stopped on the very last lap and they were able to score that point through Alex Albon's driving. Let's talk about that. I think it's exceptional, really, and a great result for him.
Yeah, really good result. I was shocked to see his pace the last 10 laps on the hard tyres. It made sense for him to stay out there because if he had pitted with Alonso and with Magnussen in the virtual safety car, he would still be behind them, and they had no chance of the point. So it was really worth a punt. To just try and go extra long and see what happens. And it worked brilliantly. Pirelli said those tires, the hard tires, are only going to last 40 laps. They lasted like 56, 57 laps. And I was shocked at that pace towards the end because it looked like he was falling back. The pace started coming really good at the end there, and that got them that point.
They've got to roll the dice, haven't they? They've got to take those kind of risks, if you like, calculated risks. And it's great to see. We were all looking and wondering with that big 0 pit stop next to his name when they were going to come in. I was wondering if they'd do what Schumacher did at Silverstone one year. I can't remember which one it was, where he came in, as for the flag. I think that was for a penalty, but it worked superbly, and long may it continue. Because I think, no disrespect to his teammate, but I think Alex is the guy who's going to have to carry the can for most of these strategies and hopefully points finishes.
Because that's the point, isn't it? The team can come up with good strategies, but they need a driver who they know is just maximising the lap times. And I was actually watching his lap times through the race, and I think David Croft brought it out in commentary. He was doing, towards the end of the race in particular, his lap times were very comparable to those around him, despite it being towards the end of the race on those. I mean, obviously the hard tyre, it seemed for most people actually the hard tyre was a really nice racy tyre compared to the medium, which seemed to grain quite badly the left front, didn't it, for a number of the drivers?
Yeah, and also I think Alex has something to prove. We all know that the kind of trials and tribulations of what he went through in a couple of years ago, over the last couple of years, and he's a great guy. He's one of the kind of new breed that that are going to hopefully carry the sport forward and be the face of the sport. Again, he's kind of almost a multinational, speaks multiple languages, and let's hope that he can keep delivering for a team which is kind of everyone's got a soft spot for. Obviously, Frank's now gone, but we all still carry that soft spot in our hearts for Williams.
Yeah, and always will. Let's have a look at the Drivers' Championship, because the other driver, and I'm keen to see where he is Valtteri Bottas was the next best up in the top 10 in terms of his starting position, finishing position. He made up 4 places in the race. We know Valtteri's doing a really good job, seems to be very comfortable, enjoying himself. Perhaps not so much this weekend with the Mercedes regaining performance. I'd like to see the Drivers' Championship table, and so we can see where Valtteri sits now in that. There it is, and there is Valtteri just in the top 10. Wow, that was lucky, because I didn't know the answer to that until it came up on the screen. What stands out to you, Alex, on that list?
Well, I mean, obviously, Max Verstappen there in P6, that stands out. But, you don't finish 2 out of the 3 races, that's going to happen. But look at that gap there between Leclerc and George Russell in second. That's a big gap there. George Russell will be pretty happy in second position. He's only had 1 podium this year, and he's there in second. Sainz in third, Perez in fourth, Hamilton in fifth. So, again, I love the new regulations this year because it's allowing some of the smaller teams to have their time in the spotlight. We're seeing Haas perform well. You just talked about Bottas and Alfa Romeo shine, and of course we had Williams shine today as well. So, and it's good to see.
But Alex, do you think that's going to continue, or do you think that a natural order will start to materialise?
I actually think it will continue. I don't think Haas will be able to maintain its good start, but yeah, I think it's getting a bit mixed up because of reliability. If the reliability was better, the table would look a lot as we expect it to look.
It's interesting that reliability issue, isn't it? Because it's something that we in the hybrid generation, I don't think, or hybrid era, if you like, I don't think that the sport has ever capitalised on the marvel that these engines are, the most efficient thermo engines ever produced, incredibly fuel efficient, and packing a punch, that's off the scale as far as power and drivability is concerned. But suddenly we're seeing, for whatever reason, I know the parameters are tighter on how much they can bring resource and spend, but we're seeing unreliability, and it's a bit of a shock.
Yeah, but you have to remember at the beginning of the hybrid era, how bad the reliability was. And I think it's just trying to...
Really? The first race, we were all stunned that they all finished.
2014? 2013, was it?
Yeah, 2014. 2014. They were pretty bad at testing at Jerez when they came out. And Red Bull famous. But the first race, everyone was on it.
Yeah,
I thought the reliability got better. I thought the last few years we saw the reliability was through the roof compared to the beginning, which was quite normal. And
certainly very good.
The power units haven't changed. I think it's just trying to package everything in the new car. Maybe they're just getting a little bit too fine in the margins with the cooling and stuff. But it's great when we get on top of it.
Yeah, and people who got on top of it includes the McLaren team. They've had a pretty poor start to the season by their own high standards, but finished 5th and 6th today. And of course, one of the partners of the McLaren team is WebEx by Cisco. They're also a partner of the Go F1 show.
Late braking, what do you think?
Love it or no chance?
Daniel, no chance.
Let's put up a poll.
Love it, love it, love it wins.
We need that part.
It's nearly done.
Can you repeat that? That's better.
It's done.
With WebEx, the McLaren Formula One team is collaborating like never before. Introducing the WebEx Suite, driving hybrid work.
Welcome back. And if you just joined us, it's a reminder that Charles Leclerc and the Ferrari team had another great victory, this time in the Australian Grand Prix. And Charles Leclerc, there it is, from Sergio Perez and Mercedes' George Russell. That's the top 3. Somebody who didn't score points today, but has had a fantastic debut so far, debut season, is the Chinese driver from Shanghai, Zhou Guanyu. And it's a fantastic privilege for us today to be able to welcome, also from Shanghai, the quite famous now journalist, Frankie Mao. Frankie, welcome.
Hi, Matthew. Hi guys, thanks for having me. It's great to be
great-
here. So I
great to
really
have you.
want to be in Melbourne. Yeah.
Yes. Well, we'd love to be with you in Melbourne. But tell us, Frankie, I want to know what you think of Zhou's performance today and so far this season.
Well, of course, it's a bit shame that he finished 11th, just one way to the top 10 scoring points. But I think so far this season, he had a very solid start to his rookie season. As we can see, he went through Q2 in all three qualifying, and then he finished in top 10 in his first race. It's very impressive.
It is. And was that a surprise to you? You've been following Zhou as he came up through the ranks, but was it a surprise to you that he did that well?
Well, to be very honest, I was not certain if he would, to score points at very early start of the season. I have faith that he might be in top 10 for a few races, but just to finish in top 10 at his first race, I was quite caught surprisingly.
Yeah, it's quite interesting, isn't it, Matt? That in many ways he's had the perfect start, hasn't he? Okay, yes, okay, he could be better. He could be outperforming Bottas, but we talked about as a rookie how important it is to come into a season and not put yourself under pressure and not make mistake and crash. Like we saw Tsunoda last year, very spectacular, but he put a lot of pressure on him. But with those accidents, Zhou's managed to keep it out of the wall, keep it nice and clean, picked up a point even. And it's been a nice, steady start to his rookie year. But having said that, he'll also have to start ramping up those performances, isn't he? He's going to have to try and beat his teammate.
Yeah, I quite agree with you, Alex, because I think I was quite impressed by his team's reaction. I was chatting with some engineers, and they told me they were impressed by how he managed his tire, how he just to follow their instruction in the race pace. So I think the team is quite understanding how he can manage the car. And I think because I just follow him that's kind of for 5 years, and I can see his racing craft is getting a lot of better than he when he was F2.
Yeah, I'm with you. I've always been, I was expecting him to be like this because I thought the key point was that, yes, the criticism of him might be that he, putting aside the fact that he comes with a budget, which is the thing that often people hold against drivers with money, which is kind of ridiculous if they can also perform, right? But he did 2 or 3 years in each level coming up, Formula 3, Formula 2. So he's got a lot of experience, but again, people often say, well, he found his speed. Yeah, that's true, he did, and he would find his pace year by year. He was never slow. But what I liked about, particularly in his final year of Formula 2, was when he was in the very heat of battle, the sharp end of the field, he wasn't that guy who was taking off wing end plates into the back end of somebody else's car or going off the racetrack. I never seen him go off the racetrack anywhere.
No, he's not. No, yeah. I mean, of course, he wanted to get very, very good result, and you can see that we have 1.4 billion people. He just come from such a large country that all the pressure on him, being the first ever Chinese racing driver in the worldwide stage. You definitely want to be someone that can show how we can race. In fact, I think so far he did quite well in all his 3 races, because he was always there when the opportunity arose. What definitely to score the points. As you can see, even in Melbourne, he finished 11th. So he just one way,
Yeah, and that's a good question, Frankie. Is he? How's the reception getting picked up? You mentioned the 1.4 billion people. That's quite a fan base to have.
Yeah, exactly. Well, actually, so we are a very large country, but we still have football, basketball, so many sports. Formula 1 is still a young sport in this country, but I can see the interest of Zhou is definitely going up all the way. I have a very interesting facts and numbers I can tell you that the first, the news of the announcement came in last year when we post on the official WeChat channel of Chinese GP, we reached 70,000 readership. It's a record of the entire WeChat channel of the Chinese GP. So I can see. And one of the funny thing is, when the announcement was made, I read some articles was published by actually the real estate agencies in UK, because we know Zhou, he moved to UK when he was very, very young. So this kind of real estate agencies want to talk the advantage that to
Really?
want to get more people to buy house in UK.
Excellent.
That's really funny.
Excellent. International business through Formula One. Frankie, it's been fantastic to have you on the show to get the perspective of China, obviously yourself as an experienced journalist, but of China on China's first driver in Formula One. It's been brilliant to have you. Really, thank you very much. I have to have you back on the show later in the year when Zhou Guanyu gets his first podium.
Yeah.
Right, let's have a look at the Constructors' Championship, because Zhou's 1 point that he scored back in the first race has helped the Alfa Romeo team to be sixth on the leaderboard. You can see there. I suppose it is slightly surprising that Ferrari have, first of all, such a huge lead, but also, Alex, that it's not from Red Bull Racing, but it's from Mercedes.
Yeah. I mean, and they lost Sainz today, don't forget. They only had one car finish the race today, and they still got that big lead. But yeah, looking so good for Ferrari. Can Mercedes and Red Bull close that gap? Still a long way to go. You'd have to argue that it's possible. McLaren there in fourth, finally getting off and showing the results that they're capable of. Alpine there in fifth. Today will feel like a day they didn't quite get the points they deserved, I feel, because Alonso was quick. And you're right, Alfa Romeo there in sixth, Haas in seventh, AlphaTauri in eighth, Williams ninth, Aston Martin 10th.
Yeah, shocking news there. Aston Martin, the only team yet to score a point. Much brighter news, in many ways, is the Grand Prix in Las Vegas in 2023. First of all, I suspect this is one for you, Darren. You're a master of light. Your thoughts, Vegas, good or bad as a thing for Formula One?
Yeah, I'm quite excited about it, to be honest. Quite a kind of preliminary plans to do a bit of a road trip across the kind of California and taking in a few of the sites, and then arrive there. And I think I'm kind of more excited about this event than I am about Miami. I know Miami has been one that everyone is kind of revved up for, but I don't know, Vegas, maybe historically because the sport had those races there in the very early 80s, which obviously were visually appalling, but in a car in the back lot of the Caesars Palace. But this one, well, look at it. Look at what you're showing now, the Bellagio and Paris, and all the famous casinos and highlights. In what is not just a destination city, it is a proper city now, Las Vegas. So we're going to a place that really, I think will embrace Formula One, and kind of hopefully it's a race that will capture the imagination of the people there.
I think you're right, and it'll capture the imagination of more brand leaders, which is what excites me. And Alex, as a driver, what do you think about the potential track layout?
The track layout looks all right. I mean, I'm not so interested about the track layout. Street tracks, you don't go there for the driving. You go there for the event. You know what I mean? Like Singapore Grand Prix, like Melbourne. You go there for the event. All the things around it, and that's going to be phenomenal. That's going to be super exciting to go.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that they've scheduled it for a Saturday night over what I'm reliably informed will be the Thanksgiving weekend, and that's not very good for TV viewing in the traditional European markets of Formula One. So it's really kind of trying to appeal to perhaps get the big whales in to get into those casinos and have a race on a Saturday night, and that obviously is something as well, taking place over the if it's confirmed over the Thanksgiving weekend, which obviously in America is just about their biggest party of the year.
I think that's massively important, Darren, because I love what's happened to Formula One under the Liberty ownership and the Chase Carey era. I've talked about Sean Bratches before, who is the marketing leader, the architect very much of a number of improvements in Formula One, Drive to Survive being one, and just sort of the way the paddock's opened up, the longer time we have on the grid, all of these things which I think make the show much better. I was slightly nervous of those guys, either Sean finished his contract and moved on, or just moving more into the shadows, and whether we might lose some of that show business part of Formula One. But it seems not, right? A race on a Saturday night, as you say, that isn't geared up for European time zones like every other Grand Prix has to be, tells you a lot.
Yeah. It does, yeah, it does. And I kind of, we've discussed it many times. I've been wary of when the Americans came in. Not that I have a problem with Americans. I've got some great friends who are Americans, but it's just that kind of razzmatazz feel to what is a Eurocentric and incredibly British-centric sport, or English almost, in as far as where the sport is based, if you like. And I was a little bit suspicious of when they came in about the razzmatazz and what we saw. And some of the elements of what we're seeing, I still not so much a fan of, but I think that maybe Stefano Domenicali coming in, he comes with that more old school European centric view, and I think he's doing a good job, and maybe keeping expectations while obviously his job is to build those up. I think that he's doing a good job. And the future's bright.
Speaking about bright, see how I did that? First of the night races we ever had in Formula One was, of course, Singapore. And it's going to be great to have that back on the schedule later this year, end of September, first weekend of October. And indeed, a rumour going around at the moment that we might indeed have 2 Singapore Grand Prix back-to-back this year. Not confirmed. In fact, we tweeted to the Singapore Grand Prix media office, and they just said, well, we're totally focused on putting on the Singapore Grand Prix. Alex, what do you think about that rumour?
I would love it. I mean, for me, Singapore Grand Prix is my favourite Grand Prix of the year. Not just because I live close to it. It's, as an event, it's fantastic. When I did Formula One, my favourite Grand Prix was Montreal and Melbourne, because the tracks near cities are phenomenal, and Singapore Grand Prix is right in the heart of what is a fantastic city. So to do 2 events would be great. Why not? It takes a lot of money and time and resource to get everything up and ready. Macau did it two weekends in a year once and seemed to work out there. I know the taxi drivers will be complaining non-stop, but I personally would love to see it.
Taxi drivers are always complaining. That's a sign that things are going okay. We've heard from you, your opinion, Alex. I want to ask also the fans. Don't forget our viewers. Let us know at Go F1 Show what you think. Should there be 2 Singapore Grand Prix this year, 2022? And a question for the fans, but also for you, Darren, because I know it's a question that many people want to ask you, which is your favourite Grand Prix?
Probably Singapore. I hate to just echo what Alex is saying, but I look at Grand Prix. I always have since first I picked the camera up. That you look at them visually. So I'm sitting, unfortunately, if you like, in Auckland, watching the Grand Prix in Melbourne, and looking at the light, looking at the interestingly in qualifying, seeing the drivers complaining about the sun in their eyes. My God, every photographer is whooping with joy because they've got such fantastic light. Whereas obviously when we go to Singapore, it's all artificial light, but boy, is it a fantastic event. The heat, the noise, the speed, the kind of the running of it on a European time zone is always slightly kind of discombobulating to get your head around if you're from the side of the world we're on. And but as a whole, if friends of mine say, or I get messages from people, which Grand Prix should I go to? Singapore is right up there.
So if that's your favorite, then what's your top 3 then? Because there's a question on Twitter about what's your top 3, and if you any MotoGP tracks you'd like to shoot at.
MotoGP, I did some MotoGP in the kind of the Big Bang era of bike racing, with Doohan and the late kind of Doohan stage of races. And one of the circuits that we went to was Mugello that I hadn't been to for Formula One. So obviously that's been ticked off, which I always thought would be a beautiful place to go to. Misano is quite a nice circuit to work at. Obviously, again, I look at the kind of visually. remedies nearby. So if you wanted to combine it with a holiday destination, but I guess to answer your question, my favourite races, they always used to always start with an M. So it was Melbourne, it was Montreal, but Malaysia. I love the Kuala Lumpur circuit. Absolutely love it. I was really, really disappointed that we don't go there, and was hoping that with some substitute races coming in, it may be a place that we go back to. But I guess really it doesn't matter what the circuit, which circuit it is. As a photographer, you've just got to rise to the challenge of it being not particularly photo friendly, not photogenic, not particularly good light, good weather. You've got to rise to it, and that's the challenge. And when we went to places like Istanbul Park for the Turkish Grand Prix, the other photographers would moan their socks off about how there were no pictures. It would always drive me harder to prove that to them on Monday morning, look how good this circuit is. If you work your pants off, you can make any place look good. That's always been my desire anyway.
I'm with you, and I'm going to say I'm going to get shot for this by a number of different people, but whilst the Singapore Grand Prix is great, it's nothing about the Singapore Grand Prix. I think we should have as many different circuits on a calendar as possible. And for us to have two races in one place when there's another racetrack not far away, as in Sepang, and I've done it by road from KL to Singapore with Alex Jung at the wheel, and it's actually I probably can't tell you how short a distance it is in time, because we probably broke a few speed limits along the way. Maybe, obviously, I don't mean that. We just didn't stop for petrol. But not to have a race at Sepang when we could possibly have one, I think says there's still some work to be done on the commercials of Formula One. I think, for whatever reason.
Yeah, 100% agree, Matthew. 100% agree. I don't think it's right. We have a plethora of circuits globally, and we shouldn't be focusing on having, as much as I love the Singapore Grand Prix, we shouldn't be having two at the same race back to back.
No. And I've got a question for you, Darren. So we had so many questions to ask you today. We're going to run over time because it's a unique so far opportunity to have you on the show. There's a question from the viewers, which is, how many cameras do you normally take to a race, and which lenses do you frequently use? And then my second question, you can just follow on from that, is what you think about these new 2022 cars.
Well, to answer Mr. Seven's question, Seven Head, I take generally two cameras, two DSLRs, and I often would take a small Leica camera that I use to do pictures, kind of more pictures that perhaps I enjoy taking away from Formula One, that kind of thing. But yeah, it's always a set of two cameras that are identical, set up identically, so that you can grab one and it's exactly the same. It's just an extension of your hand, if you like, so that you don't have to fuss around at different dials. And then a set of probably five or six lenses, trying to constantly, every year, trying to chip away and have less lenses so that there's less decisions to make, and you've got to work the lenses that you've got. And what was the second question? Oh yeah, what do I think of the 2022 cars? I think they look gorgeous. I obviously haven't seen one in the metal yet, in the carbon fiber yet, but and pretty soon will be. And I think they look gorgeous, from the slow cars like the particularly handsome but heavy looking Aston Martin, to the Ferrari, which, just look at it in that light with what, 10 laps to go in Melbourne. It just looked like a dream, an absolute dream of a car. And my favourite, I think, is the Mercedes, just because it has that slightly otherworldly look to it, which we're all kind of getting used to. And I hope, as we say, that they switch it on and it's as quick as goes as well as it looks. But I think it's great to see. It's almost like going to a Formula Libre race when I was a child, and seeing all these different shapes and crazy different cars, and asking my dad, what's that and what's that? And suddenly we've got lots of different designs, which is great.
Yeah.
Which camera do you take to races, Alex?
Which camera do you take? I take my iPhone.
Yeah.
My iPhone.
Actually, yeah, I got a question for you, Matt, because we just here at the Australian Grand Prix. It's kind of nice being back in Australia, isn't it? Because it's been 3 years since we've been there. And what was that like? You were at the last race, weren't you? Well, race.
It will be nice to go back. I think all of us on this show, and Frankie as well. I asked Frankie, "You're going to go to Melbourne?" And he said, "Well, even if I could get there, I wouldn't be able to get back because of the flight situation going back into so many places in the world, including Shanghai." It was an interesting experience. I mean, my personal one was there, obviously, for Fox Sports Asia in those good old days and covering the Grand Prix. We'd done all the work on Thursday, and Thursday night, McLaren announced that one of their team members tested positive for COVID. And of course, I had the advantage, I suppose, of having worked for Zach Brown at McLaren for 7 years, and I know how he thinks and operates, which is that, so when they made that decision, that announcement, they were withdrawing from the Grand Prix, to me, that was a decision they had made 2 weeks before in a calm, air-conditioned room. And so as soon as that decision was announced, I thought they've thought through what's going to happen over the coming days. So I think I should get out of here as well, because I didn't want to get trapped in a hotel room in Melbourne with the attendant, costs as well as anything else. So that was my story.
Yeah.
Anyway, we've had a
get a flight out of there. Get a flight out of there.
Exactly. Well, we'll all be going back hopefully next March. It's been brilliant to have both of you on the show, and many, many thanks as well to Frankie Mao in Shanghai. Many thanks to you, the viewers, for participating, for sharing with us your thoughts and your questions. It's been absolutely fantastic. Darren, quick one from you. If people want to follow you, when people want to follow you, if they're not already on social, how do they do that?
Well, the main one, because you want to see my pictures, hopefully, is Art of F1. Just simply that. And you'll see lots of pictures of more historic cars, 2019 when I last was at a Grand Prix, and but soon they'll start to be 2022 cars in hopefully all their glory.
Fantastic. Alex, many thanks to you in Kuala Lumpur. Many thanks to you, the viewers. 2 weeks to the next one, the San Marino Grand Prix, or whatever they call it these days. Stay tuned to Go F1. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah.
Cheerio.